Genshin just released a brand new World Quest series called A Long Day in the Mountains, and it may have quietly revealed one of the biggest missing pieces in the sibling story. One of the strangest details has been this. When the traveler's sibling first arrived in Conria, their memory was completely blank on arrival. And until now, we've never really had an explanation for how something like that could have happened. But this very World Quest may have finally given us one. This quest is centered around the Temple of Space, a realm tied to Asmoday, the god of space, the same god who separated the traveler and their sibling in the very first cutscene of the game. And toward the end of the quest, there's a detail that is ridiculously easy to miss. Right before the final battle with Melanta, you can interact with a capsule called a damaged coffin. And this is what it says.
Time has washed away every trace, every lingering presence, and yet you know. The one who once rested here was the person most important to you. So go on, keep moving, keep traveling, until the day you meet again.
With wording that specific, this dialogue has to be about the traveler's sibling. The person most important to you, keep moving, keep traveling, until the day you meet again. So this damaged coffin is very strongly implied to have once contained the traveler's sibling. The coffin is found right outside the Cage of Suchness, the area where Asmoday herself would have been chilling if she hadn't abandoned the Temple of Space. This means the sibling was imprisoned within the Temple of Space at one point. Asmoday created the Temple of Space to store various entities and items of interest, and that those taken there would never be able to die. That's why you see so many people from different ages of Teyvat. Historia also explains that the temple was originally meant by the gods to be an exhibition hall for the conservation of fallen civilizations, but that the sisters of that one great god started bringing in whatever they found interesting. He also says the god of space's sisters would occasionally grant small pardons for acts of change. So it's essentially Asmoday's room, but she lets her sisters decorate it. And if the sibling was really trapped here once, then the next question becomes obvious. How did they get out? And what did they have to sacrifice in order to leave? Because the Temple of Space doesn't just store things, it has very specific rules.
We interrupt this lore spiral to bring you news from today's sponsor.
Today's video is sponsored by Aniba. Aniba makes topping up your favorite games ridiculously easy, and yes, they've got all the Hoyoverse titles, including Genshin Impact. Here's how it works. Just search Genshin Impact on Aniba's top-up page, choose the server you play on, and enter your UID. And boom, that's it. No login and no password required. It's quick, simple, and you still get your top-up delivered instantly. And the best part? Aniba's cashback system. You can get money back from your top-up. For example, if I buy this Primogem pack, I can go to orders and hit claim, and cashback will be added to your account. Then that balance just sits there ready to use on your next top-up for you to use on future pulls. If you play Genshin in Japan, the prices there are currently the best. If you want to use Aniba for your Columbina and future Nodcry pulls, use the link in the description and pinned comment down below. Thank you once again, Aniba, for sponsoring today's video. The highest point of the temple is the Atrium of Suchness, the place where gods and watchers dwell, and where hidden truths are kept. Historia explains that if you intend to leave that place, you can't take its history, secrets, or knowledge with you. Then he says something even more important. Only those who choose to abandon all their memories are permitted to enter that hall. He explains that to seek an audience with the master of the temple, or Asmoday in this case, is to seek answers and closure, and because of that, all memories gathered there are supposed to be wiped away. So, to leave the Temple of Space, you have to sacrifice your memories. The traveler's sibling says that when they first arrived in Conria 500 years ago, their memory was completely blank. The siblings' lore also says they were the first to awaken from hibernation with no memory of the traveler, and that they appeared in Conria after the heavens responded to the summoning. Their memory loss is one of the oldest unresolved mysteries in the entire main story. The siblings' blank memory on arrival in Conria isn't explained by the opening cutscene. The opening cutscene happens later, during the Cataclysm, when the twins are trying to leave Teyvat and Asmodee cubes them. So the siblings' memory loss happens before the opening cutscene even begins. That means there had to be some earlier event. Some earlier intervention that caused a sibling to arrive in Conria with their memories already wiped. And the Temple of Space now gives us a possible scenario for how that happened. So there are really two possibilities here. The first is that the sibling was taken to the Temple of Space after the events of Genshin's opening cutscene. The second is that the opening cutscene was not actually the first time the sibling and Asmodee met. It was the second. In other words, the sibling may have already been trapped in the Temple of Space, possibly inside that damaged coffin when they first arrived in Teyvat. and they just don't remember any of it. This video is about that second theory. Because if that's true, then this may be the sequence of events that happened after the twins crash into Teyvat. The twins' ship crashes into Nodcry. The sibling is the first one to awaken. Asmoday may have pulled the sibling into the Temple of Space, which could explain why the ship looks unopened even though the sibling had already left it. That would explain why the sibling later appears in Khaenri'ah after the heavens responded to the summoning, and why the circumstances of their arrival are so abnormal, because it was Asmoday who responded to Khaenri'ah's summoning. Then comes the most important part. The price of leaving their coffin or escaping the Temple of Space is memory, which explains why the sibling emerges in Khaenri'ah completely forgetting the traveler. After that, Khaenri'ah adopts the blank sibling and gives them a new role. The sibling says that after arriving there, they served as Khaenri'ah's prince or princess for many years before slowly recovering their memories of the traveler. And then something happens that causes the sibling to be tied to Teyvat in a way that traveler isn't. Unlike the traveler, the sibling ends up recorded in Irminsul, even though beings from outer space normally should not be. The lore suggests that Khaenri'ah is related to the reason why. So whatever happened to the sibling didn't just separate them from the traveler, it may have changed their status deeply enough that Teyvat itself treats them as part of its own history. Then much later, during the Cataclysm, Asmoday intervenes again. And if this theory is right, then this would be Asmoday and the siblings' second meeting. They wouldn't remember meeting Asmoday nor being in the Temple of Space at all. Now, the word damaged in damaged coffin is also really interesting. It makes me think that the sibling may have somehow escaped the coffin themselves, or maybe someone broke them out. We know from the quest that the seat of Asmoday has been left empty, and the rules of the Temple of Space have begun to falter. So the coffin being damaged might mean the prison was no longer functioning properly. Now let's talk about Khaenri'ah. Khaenri'ah had already been interested in Outlanders, aka aliens, long before the Eclipse Dynasty. Since the Crimson Moon Dynasty, they had an orphanage meant to house children from beyond this world in hopes that one such child would possess the power to transcend the gods. They were looking for a descender. But the sibling is not a descender, only Traveler is. So if the sibling is just some alien from outer space, why were they treated differently? I think the most likely answer is that the sibling was not just your ordinary Outlander. They seem to have been treated as the answer to a long-running Khaenri'ah hope or wish. Maybe the sibling was meant to be a descender and we just took that future away from them. Just a thought. King Irmin immediately declares them his heir and savior, and soon after uses them as a vessel for unlimited abyssal power. That only makes sense if Khaenri'ah or King Irmin saw the sibling as something more than an Outlander. They saw them as the answer they had been waiting for. If the sibling arrived in Khaenri'ah as a blank slate, then perhaps the memory wiped by Asmoday made them more bindable to Teyvat. The Khaenri'ahns could write a story for them and make them usable somehow. It's easy to blame Asmoday, but there's one detail that suggests this might not have been entirely her fault. Historia says he suspects the path to the heavens may not have been designed by the mistress of the temple, because the whole description of using memories to construct the path feels too emotionally charged. So the quest itself is warning us not to blame every exact detail of the temple's mechanics directly on Asmoday personally, despite what Paimon might feel, because Paimon was so insistent on calling Asmoday a bad god. But it still doesn't affect our theory. The sibling was likely trapped in the Temple of Space, and they may have sacrificed their memories in order to leave. In the past, we've toyed with the idea that Asmoday and the sibling are possibly working together or have a deal with each other. But this world quest makes me realize for sure there's a connection between the god of space and the sibling that has yet to be revealed. But there's one more weird detail worth bringing up before we end. Across from the coffin that seems to have once contained the sibling, there is another capsule with a note inside it. That note sounds like it belongs to the author of Vera's Melancholy, a book series about the Andromeda Empire, a civilization that apparently stretches across half the galaxy group. That alone is already interesting, because it means the temple may not have been storing only one unusual alien. There's the possible side theory here that the second chamber may have contained Kleiner, Alice's partner. Since he's male, he's a seeker, he travels to other planets, and he has a connection to Teyvat's borders. So far, he seems to fit the criteria for being the author of Vera's Melancholy. However, there's no direct evidence right now that Kleiner is a novelist or that he wrote Vera's Melancholy. So just treat this as a fun theory. I plan to do a fuller recap and analysis of this quest, so stay tuned for that. Trust me, there's so much to cover, and I haven't even scratched the surface. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. I'm your leafy lore keeper Minsleif, and I read the Genshin Impact lore so that you don't have to.